Welcome to the American Diversity Report podcasts, where we interviewed diverse innovators and amazing change makers. I'm Deborah Levine, the editor-in-chief of the American Diversity Report and your host. And with me today is Aubrie Fennecken. She is the Global Executive Director of WIN, which is Women in Innovation, a nonprofit organization built to close the gender gap in innovation. I can hardly wait to hear. Welcome, Aubrie.
Thank you so much for having me today, Deborah. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh my goodness, yes. So tell us, how did you get involved in innovation work in this nonprofit?
Yeah, I have a rather curvy path to innovation. My background is actually really rooted in the nonprofit space. And so I started out when I first graduated from college. I had studied theater and psychology, and I had dreams of being a Broadway producer, and found myself, I know, very, very unusual. But I found myself working at a small children's puppet theater company, and it was a nonprofit organization. And I learned all about what nonprofits go through and what it takes to run a nonprofit theater specifically. And I really fell in love with the social minded aspect of the work. And so throughout my career, I spent several years in theater, but then pivoted to more economic empowerment for low income populations. I was director of development for an organization doing that for many years. And then worked as a consultant, working with a variety of nonprofits around fundraising and management issues. And through that work, I came to a WIN event, a Women in Innovation event, and was just blown away by the content and the conversation and the women who were in the room. It was a virtual event at the time because this was early COVID days. And I just was so delighted to have found this organization that's working to get more women into leadership positions in innovation, which is so important. And they happened to be looking for an executive director at the time, and what they needed really aligned with my skill set. So I threw my hat in the ring, and here we are, almost a year later from that first event. And to tell you the truth, my background really isn't in innovation. So the innovation space to me is somewhat new, but we do at WIN take the perspective of innovation as a practice and a skill set. So we kind of look at it broadly. And from that perspective, I would say absolutely every nonprofit I've ever worked with has been incredibly innovative.
You have to be, really, in order to keep up with the community's needs.
Indeed, indeed.
Yes, and oh my goodness. So here you are 1 year later. Tell us, what is the organization like? What is it doing?
Yeah, so WIN, we call it WIN for short, Women in Innovation, is a 5-year-old nonprofit organization that was founded by women who were working in innovation agencies. And so these women, these brilliant women who had come up through school and through the early parts of their careers, surrounded by other, amazing, smart women, started to realize that there were less and less women around them as they moved up the ranks in this field. And so found that, there were hardly any women who were leading these companies or who were chief innovation officers at corporations. And, a related piece, women who are founders, startup founders, receive far less venture capital. That's another thing. So they saw that there were less women in leadership as they moved up, and this didn't sit right. And so our founders, Maria and Althea, were like, what if we get together and we invite women from across the innovation space into a room to tackle this problem together. We're innovators. This is our skill. We're great at problem solving and creating, new products, system solutions. And so that's what they did. And so 5 years later, we have a community of more than 4,000 women across the globe. We have chapters in New York, San Francisco, and London, and we're looking to grow. And then, of course, we also have a virtual community in our WIN Hub, which is our online community platform. We've delivered hundreds of hours of innovation programming to women through workshops, through courses, through mentorship, and we are looking to really grow. So I'm the first full-time employee of WIN. WIN is otherwise completely volunteer run, which to me is amazing. When you see what these women have accomplished over the years and the incredible talent that comes to WIN because these women are very highly skilled innovators, it's mind-boggling to me. So yeah, so that's kind of WIN's history. And what we do, of course, we offer innovation programming to women in the innovation space to help them get into the field, which is notoriously competitive, to help them advance in the field so that we have more leaders there. And then we're also working with innovation employers and investors to bring them in and help us solve this problem because as we all know, like, women can't solve this problem alone. We also need the systems to change and those who have power currently to be kind of having that conversation with us.
So I'm very curious about what your programs are like. What is what does it look like for an innovation workshop? What
Yeah.
happens in that?
Excellent. So the first kind of programming we started offering and something we still offer today are monthly workshops. And so we used to offer those in person at our 3 chapter cities, but of course over the last year that has turned to virtual, which has honestly been a really wonderful opportunity for us to bring in more women from a more geographically diverse places and different innovation markets. That's really been wonderful and exciting. But typically those look like 90-minute workshops where it's really hands-on. So we'll have someone from a company, for example, we had an event last week or the week before, that our San Francisco team coordinated with Autodesk, and it was around strategic foresight, which is something I knew nothing about. So we had a couple of representatives from Autodesk come in and teach our team about strategic foresight. We had breakouts where we worked on doing something called trend forecasting and kind of mapping, which was super interesting. Foresight mapping, I'm going to use the wrong phrase there, but it was just an incredible opportunity. And so anytime WIN has an event, it's very hands-on. That's something we think is really important. We want our members to walk away with actionable skills they can use in their careers. And we also think that learning and connecting happens better when you're, getting your hands into the work itself as opposed to just, hearing from someone. So that's really the focus for us, is that they're very action oriented, and they're really based in the field, and they're led by people who are working in the innovation space. And we define that by, of course, innovation agencies and firms, but also, research and development departments in corporations, innovation departments in big corporations, and the startup ecosystem. So anyone who's, working in a startup, working in venture, we kind of consider all of those pieces as part of the innovation landscape. But innovation happens across industries. It happens across sectors. And so we really take an inclusive view of who is an innovator and what is innovation in our world.
Excellent. Goodness, I'm eager to see one of these workshops. I think it would be wonderful as an entrepreneur myself. Entrepreneurs are innovators by nature.
Absolutely. We would love to have you, and we invite you and your audience to please join us at an upcoming event. In addition to our monthly programs, we also have started to offer longer form learning opportunities that we call learning cohorts, around deeper dives around specific topics. And so one we're working on now is focused on how to finance your startup and take your innovation from an idea to a company. What do you need from the financial perspective? And we've got a banking partner helping us with that, which will be announced later this year. We're also always iterating on different mentorship models, whether it's peer-to-peer mentorship or something we're calling one-on-ones right now, which is really exciting. And I'd love to share that with your community. We'd love to welcome everyone in to be a part of what we're working on.
So I see you have some ambitious plans for the next year or so.
Indeed, indeed. So I think that you know, COVID has been really challenging, and it's been really hard on women in the workforce. And so we have a real responsibility, I think, to step up and try and close that gap that is unfortunately currently widening. I think we've unfortunately probably all seen the stats that women in the workforce have been set back about a generation as a result of this pandemic. And that's hard pill to swallow, but it's also it's a challenge that we're ready to stand and take on. As the first full-time executive director of the organization, it's also really my responsibility to say, you know, where are we really moving the needle? And so a lot of the work that we're doing this year is on testing different formats and figuring out what's most impactful so we can scale it in the years to come. And so we do have some ambitious plans, but we're being thoughtful and kind of methodical about how we grow, so that we can do it in a way where we're truly having an impact and truly closing that gap.
Yes. Closing that gap should be quite a challenge, and one that we really need help on, don't we not?
100%. And you've really hit something that I think is pivotal, is that we're not in this alone. So it's not as though, you know, WIN is going to close the gender gap in innovation all on our own. We are one player in an ecosystem of resources that includes other nonprofit organizations working in either specific fields or in similar areas. Also includes, like I mentioned, those employers and those investors who maybe are or aren't providing the supports that women need, or promoting women at the same clip as men, or investing in them at the same clip as men. It includes, you know, the women and men who work in innovation spaces, and of course, you know, anyone on the gender spectrum, however they identify. And yeah, so we really think of ourselves as part of an ecosystem and part of solving the problem. But we certainly cannot do it alone, and we have no illusions that we can just single-handedly strong arm this problem.
Well, that's probably true, but I'm sure you'll have some strategies that everyone can benefit from.
Absolutely, absolutely. And something I'd love to share, actually, we recently released something called the Pioneers Report. It was the result of a year's worth of interviews by our volunteer team with 24 women who are leading figures in the innovation landscape. And based on their interviews, we, you know, picked up on some common themes and created this report. And that report is available on our website, so I'll share that link later. But one of the key themes that came out of that is the secret of the sponsor, and sponsorship as being really critical to women's advancement in the workplace. So just like one key takeaway that I can share today. And what we mean by sponsorship is, you know, when someone is using their political and influential capital on you to help you move forward. So it's sometimes framed in contrast, or like on a spectrum with mentorship, whereas, you know, if a mentor is giving you advice and helping you sort through problems, a sponsor is not that person. A sponsor is someone who like works at your company, and when they're in a room with someone who has, you know, the influence to promote you, they're speaking highly of you, or, you know, they're talking up your projects, or they're helping you get onto a project that can help you get a promotion. And so we found that sponsorship has been really critical. And so throughout March, we held a couple of events around sponsorship. We did our first clubhouse, which was really exciting. And then also had just a panel discussion last week, which was incredible. And we heard from different pairs of sponsors and sponsees who work in the innovation space and how it's affected their careers, and got some advice on how to find a sponsor, how to be a sponsor, and how to kind of pay it forward and support. So that's one piece that I can say is a really, really interesting learning that we're hoping to spread the good news about and share with everyone.
Wonderful. As an entrepreneur, I've had many sponsor-like folks over the years to boost me, recommend, share my work, and it's been invaluable, truly invaluable to have that
100%.
of person, helping you get that visibility. And of course, that's why I return the favor so often. It's so important. Yes.
Indeed.
So is there anything else you'd like to add that we haven't covered yet?
Yes. One, there are many, many ways to get involved with Women in Innovation, and we would love, we love to have people joining us. So please check out our website, which is womeninnovation.co. And there is information about various ways that you can get involved. You can join us on the WIN Hub, which is our virtual community platform. You can join our mailing list. You can join our volunteer team. You can become an ambassador of WIN, which is someone who advocates for the organization and helps us with our programming over the course of the year. Yeah, and that honestly is the biggest thing. I would say, please swing by, get involved with us, help us solve this problem and close this gender gap, because the sooner we can close the gender gap in innovation, the sooner we'll have innovations that are better serving everyone across the world. We really see this as an intervention that closes, that kind of breaks the cycle of inequity. And we want as many people as possible involved with us to make it happen.
Well, we certainly need to have equity as a major priority in this world post-COVID, if we're indeed post-COVID yet. We're going to be post-COVID for a long time. We need to work on this, and we really appreciate all that you're doing, your organization is doing, and not just for women, but it's going to benefit everybody. And so the best wishes to you, and thank you so much for coming on to the American Diversity Report podcast, sharing what you do, letting people hear about it. And audience, you've got the website. Want to repeat that again, Aubrie?
Yes, it's womeninnovation.co.
Excellent. Well, we'll look forward to hearing about your progress as the year goes on. We'll stay in touch, and audience, if you have questions, you'll see our podcast up on the ADR. You can put in comments and questions on that page when it's ready next week. Thank you so much for tuning in, and Aubrie, thank you so much for being here today and for all that you do.
Oh, thank you so much, Deborah. It's my pleasure.
Indeed.